Hello everyone, Stakuyi here, and yes, I know it has been a while, and for that I firmly apologize. I made the last video on a guide about a month ago, and yeah, now we are back for another one. Though, in this case, we're going to be looking more of an in-depth guide of how you actually play Portugal specifically. Portugal is one of those nations that they recommend that you play in the beginning, along the sides of Spain, France, or the Ottomans. With the Ottomans, of course, in this game being the most powerful entity in the game by far. In the case of Portugal, though, it's the perfect nation to play as a beginner because it has really a little bit of everything. And so while we went over a lot of the mechanics of the game last time, I figured that we need to actually go ahead and play it a little in order to really show what things are like. So let's go ahead and get into that. First off, when you're looking at Portugal, right now you don't see it on my screen because I've selected it already, but the first thing is that there's going to be a red flag that is right here that denotes your rivals, as I've said earlier. When you actually open up and look at your rivals and then can select them, the ones that most often rival you in the beginning are going to be something along the lines of Morocco, Tunis, and Tlemcen. And in this case, those really line up with who we plan on invading. So we are going to choose Morocco, Tunis, and Tlemcen. Now, one of the rivals that you're going to have as an option is going to be Castile, typically in the beginning. Whatever you do in the beginning, you can do this if you want to, but I would not recommend selecting them as a rival. You are going to want them as a friend, and you are going to strongly need them as a friend, at least in the beginning part of the game. And before I continue with this guide, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this is not a min-max guide. This is not something that is going to turn Portugal into an absolute powerhouse that is going to crush all of your opponents and make it the most powerful nation in the game. If you want something like that, it can be made, but that's not what the purpose of this for. The majority of people who are probably tuning into this video are doing so because it's going to be their first time playing EU4, and they really want to know how to play the game, how it really works. So this is the perfect example of what we can use to really show that. And in the case of Portugal, they start out with really a decent amount of everything. They start out with a okay ruler in the form of a Regency Council. They have a decent sized army. They have a pretty damn good navy. And this is something that can be used to great effect for their conquests. So when you first load into the game as Portugal, you are going to note that you have a pretty decent sized economy. If you actually go over here to the economics tab, then you can see that even after everything is said and done, you still are getting almost a full ducat per month. And one of the things that you're going to need to do first in any nation, no matter what it is you are going to need to check your missions. Now, Portugal has a very extensive mission tree, and based off these missions, that is really going to be determining what it is that your game is going to be like. You can do whatever it is that you want with any nation, but these missions under this mission tree, that is what is really going to give you a lot of bonuses, and you're strongly encouraged to follow them to at least get these bonuses in the first place. For example, one of the first ones that you are going to typically try to go for is competitive advantage, which the requirement, if you hold your mouse over the little question mark here, that is for your total navy size to be at least 100% of your of your naval force limit. Then what that does is it will give you 50 diplomatic power, 15 navy tradition, and it will give you a permanent claim upon the Tangiers region. Tangiers, that is right here. That is this little province rather than the region. Then the next one, if you go over to it again, launch a flagship. So if you build a flagship, that is going to give you a permanent claim on Leon, Extremadura, and the lower Andalusia region, which that is actually into here. See, Portugal has two paths when you are looking at it. One that really focuses on the expanse of going into North Africa and then traveling around the Cape as they did historically and establishing trade across Africa and then going over here into Asia, which is not currently visible. But in the beginning, Castile is not someone that you want to have as an enemy. You really want them as a friend. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our diplomacy, which is this button right here. And we're going to see who it is that we currently have an alliance or relationship with. As you can see, we have a truce with Granada, and we have an alliance with England. And this alliance with England, while it is something that can help you, at least in pertaining to dealing with Castile as an enemy in the future, potentially, it doesn't necessarily do for us anything right now. You can get rid of it if you want to, but I still am going to keep it because it is a diplomacy slot regardless. So, what you are going to want is to first secure an alliance with Castile. And then if you can, secure one with Aragon as well. This is very important because you want to make sure that you are protected from all sides and potentially have allies that can be called in. Now, the interesting thing to note here, and I will show this in the future, is that you have something over here in the top left called the production interface. If you click that, that will allow you to manage your relations and other aspects of the game within one screen without having to randomly click on different parts of the screen or different countries. The most important, or rather one of the most important things that you will have on here is the diplomacy aspect. So when you first start in, it will typically begin right up here at land units when you first select it. So if I was going to select Latin medieval infantry, this would allow me to click on these varying provinces after selecting this, or Latin knights, and I could actually recruit more soldiers by clicking in the varying provinces. And you see the cost that it has here of 10 ducats, and it would take 57 days to build in the first place. But what we're going to do is ignore this right now, and we are going to go right down to this little dove that says diplomacy. If you click that, you'll see that there are varying different rules. It will begin first on this tab that says improve relations, and there you will be able to automatically assign diplomats to these varying tabs. And what these tabs are going to do, depending on what it is that you want to focus on, is that it will automatically assign a diplomat to a neighboring country, someone that is in your vicinity that you border, to improve relations with an ally, or to improve relations with countries that are threatening to you. And that is what this tab focuses here for improve relations. What you want to go to is this one right here. And most games in the beginning, no matter what nation that you're going to play, you are going to want to go to diplomacy, and you're going to want to hit this button with the flags. And the reason for that is because this is the alliance setting. So when you select this little flag button here, you can immediately see from the beginning that there are 9 countries per this number right here that if I offered them an alliance right now, they would accept. You can see by scrolling to the top that this would be Castile, Navarra, Munster, Desmond, Brittany, Leinster, Thomond. Essentially, there's a lot of little nations in here that are the Irish minors, and if you zoom out, you can see everything that is in red, none of these would accept an alliance with me. Anything that is in green would, and it will tell you the values for how close they are to accepting. For example, Sligo over here, this tiny little Irish state, anything happens, anything I do that would piss them off, they're at a value of 1. And if they drop below that to 0 or below, then they're not going to accept an alliance. On the reverse, Tyrone is only at -1. So if I improved relations with them slightly, they would more than likely accept. What we want to do from the very beginning is we want to try and secure an alliance, if possible, with Castile and Aragon. But Aragon isn't going to accept that. Now, when you open up the game and you look at diplomacy here, you will see that Castile has its own rivals, and you can just click on the country and you can actually see these rivals here. They are rivaled to Morocco, Austria, and actually our ally England. But historically speaking, we are friends with them, so they are more likely to align with us, even though we are already allied to one of their rivals. But a thing that can happen at the beginning of the game is that it is very possible that Castile and Aragon will be rivals. I'm not exactly sure on the math of this. Sometimes I think it's 50-50, but of course that could vary. If you start a game and Castile and Aragon are rivals, more than likely you're only going to be able to get one or the other. In this case, neither Aragon nor Castile have rivaled one another, but they have both rivaled Morocco, who is also my rival, and that is a very big deal. Thus, it is more likely that I will be able to form a more positive relationship with them. Now, if you recall from this screen on the alliance, in the beginning, I am able to offer an alliance with Castile, but Aragon will not accept it. We have 3 diplomats that are over here in the beginning that I could send out, and to make sure that nothing happens between these two to where they max out their relations, or they somehow become unfriendly towards one another and it hurts their opinion of me, I want to make sure that I can secure some kind of relation with both of them immediately off the bat. So what you're first going to do, since you're only allowed to send one alliance at one time and you cannot send multiple offers on the same day, is that we are first going to select Aragon. We are going to go to diplomacy, and we're going to offer them a royal marriage, because this they will actually accept. That royal marriage is going to put us into the positives in terms of relation with them. And if you now hit this alliance option button, you will see that they are very close to accepting an alliance with us. it will just take a little bit of effort for us to get there. Which means, after a month has passed, since we have already sent a diplomat for this month to them, we will begin to improve relations with them so that they will form an alliance with us. Castile, on the other hand, because even if they had rivaled Aragon from the beginning, they are still friendly and willing to ally with us. Thus, we are going to go to Castile, we're going to select them, and we are going to hit Offer Alliance. It is very important that from the beginning you secure these two alliances or some form of alliance that will be able to help you against Morocco, because Morocco, depending on whatever it is it gets in the beginning, could be an alliance that is going to give you some serious trouble. Okay, so now we have an alliance with Castile, we have an alliance with England, we have a royal marriage with Aragon. That is going to show us from the beginning that we have 3 different diplomatic relations. And you can see from this number right here that it says 3 out of 4. That is because right now, in the beginning of the game, you can only have 4 diplomatic relations before you start to receive some kind of penalty. For every diplomatic relation that you have over your limit, you're going to lose 1 diplo power in the beginning. Thus, at the beginning of the game, it's highly recommended that you only have the number of diplomatic relations that really are necessary. You max them out at what it is that you need, maybe keep 1 in reserve in case you want to be flexible with your alliances or relations, or in Portugal's case, maybe it's because you're trying to save room for a vassal, and I'm going to explain that here in a second. Okay, so the alliances are said and done here, but you still have 1 diplomat set. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to Morocco, and this is going to be the target of our first expansion, so we need to start laying the groundwork. What you're going to go ahead and do is select diplomacy. You're going to scroll down here to covert actions, and you're going to select that and hit build spy network. And that means that you're going to start building a network that will gradually work its way up to 100 right here by hitting confirm. And that is going to make an invasion much easier. And there's a key reason why we're going to do that. For every point that you have in spy detection, what that's going to do is that's going to make it significantly easier to siege down their provinces, while at the same time, before you actually declare war, this is how you put a claim on a actual province in order to take it in the first place if you're not going to get something by a mission or event or something else like that. Now we need to get our military sorted. So the first thing that we're going to go do is we're going to look at our army. Now our army starts the game with 15,000 men. Not huge, but it is respectable. 11,000 infantry, 4,000 cavalry, that's actually a pretty good mixture. And on top of that, we start the game with a fairly decent leader. 333 in all stats, and we're going to explain how military combat here works in the beginning of the game, but this is a pretty damn good general to have from the start, as every time you go into a battle, you are going to get a +3, +3, and +3 to maneuver, fire, and shock. And shock in the beginning of the game, this is the one that you want a really high number of. Fire is very important toward the middle to late part of the game as guns become more important, but when combat is primarily determined by melee engagements, then shock is going to be your bread and butter. It's going to be the one that you're really going to want. Almost always, if you are going to be in an eastern nation that has heavy amounts of cavalry in it, shock is going to be one of the most powerful things that you can have in there at all. Portugal also starts out with a very sizable navy at 19 ships, and in addition to that, they start out with an explorer, Diego Gomez, and this is one that from the beginning of the game you are going to want to use in order to explore. Why? Well, if you go over here to missions, you can actually see that beyond Cape Bojador, that Portugal has discovered any province in the West African coast area. That is the requirement, and you have at least 1 colonist. If you do, then you will get 10 prestige plus a 20% settler chance. From the beginning of the game, we can go ahead and create a new unit off of this stack, scroll down, 1, 2, and 3 different units of light ships. Select this, go ahead and select the leader, hit Diego Gomez, select mission, and then you can do this special little one, which you can only do if you have an explorer called, well, Explore. If you hit that, and we can hit West African coast, we can send him on a little route. He is going to start traveling in a little route around here, exploring all these little unidentified areas that you really want to get out of the way. And that's something that you want to do whenever you have an explorer, be able to send them out as soon as possible, whenever possible, because you want to really discover as much as you possibly can. It's going to make your movement and just planning a lot easier for the future for everything that you want to do. The remainder of the Navy we don't really have a purpose with right now, so what we're going to do is select mission, and then we're going to have them hunt pirates, and we are going to set them to hunt pirates in the Sevilla trade node. And the reason we want them to hunt in the Sevilla trade node is because it will hurt and limit any kind of piracy actions that people will try to take in this node, which is our primary trade node that is going to earn us the majority of our income. So we are going to set them to hunt pirates in Sevilla, and that's pretty much going to be the end of the Navy. Now, very quickly, we are actually going to be going to war with Morocco, so we really have to plan ourselves around that. What you're going to do is you're going to go over to your country, you're going to look at your military tab, and you are going to see that our maximum force limit is going to be 20 different units, so that's about 20,000 men. Right now, our army is composed of 15,000 men, and we actually have a bonus of, well, close to 1 ducat in the positives, which means that if you actually go here over to your production interface and you look at your troops and how expensive it is to maintain units of infantry, we can actually afford 4 more units of infantry before we are going to run into any kind of supply issues going into the negatives. But we are going to fix that here in the first place. What you are going to want to do is you're going to go over to your military tab, and you will see that we actually have 5 professionalism. Now, professionalism towards the middle to late game is exceptionally important, but in the beginning, you can basically use this as another resource in order to get more manpower. And here's what I mean. This scales and shows how professional your army is in comparison to, say, a medieval or tribal force that has no sense of the concept of a professional army. The higher the professionalism, the more bonuses that your troops get, but simultaneously, the more expensive it is to maintain mercenaries, and they don't function nearly as well. If you look at the level that we have right now of 5% professionalism, which is very good to start out the game in, you will see that by having this little of professionalism, it makes mercenaries a lot cheaper. The mercenaries will have more manpower, which is good. But then in having just a little bit of professionalism, it actually gives us close to 1% bonus of siege, 0.5% of land fire damage, 0.5% of shock damage, etc. And this will increase the more that you have. If we were over here at 100%, then we would be getting some really good bonuses. But right now, we're not going to get that, and it's going to be very hard to maintain it in the first place. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit this button called Slacken Recruiting Standards. If you hit Slacken Recruiting, that is going to get rid of our 5% professionalism that we have, and it's going to give us 4,000 manpower. So why not do that? Because right here, from the beginning, that's going to give us 12,000 manpower, and you may wonder, well, why did we do that? Why did we not store up more? The reason is because we really want some additional troops that are going to help us, and we don't want to have to pay for the manpower. Because manpower is one of the most precious resources that you can ever get in the beginning of the game, and since we don't want to pay for that really much, we could do mercenaries, but the smallest unit that we would be able to afford here of the free company, that is composed of 9 troops, and that is going to put us severely over our force limit if we do so. But coincidentally, we just got 4,000 manpower by slackening our recruitment. So if we go back here to recruit regiments, and we can, coincidentally enough, afford around 4 more units of infantry before we start going into the negatives, we can go ahead and click this, and 1, 2, 3, 4, we will now have 4,000 troops that are going to be built up more. But at this point, our economy is looking pretty low, and we haven't even started playing the game yet here as... I know, I say started playing the game, like of course we started playing the game, but if you look over here, you'll see that we haven't even started playing in terms of the time. Nothing has moved forward because there's still one key thing that we have to do. And I'm going to do an in-depth guide on this here in the future, but what you will need to do is go over, click your flag, and go to the Estates tab. The Estates tab are going to be the things that are going to provide you bonuses, but simultaneously give you less control of your country. And this is a very important and confusing part that is going to mess with a lot of players when they first look at it. The short of it is that the estates, by giving out privileges, which if I just click clergy here, you can give out varying privileges, and these are going to give you bonuses, but also at the same time may hurt you in different aspects, and they will have certain costs associated with them. The more privileges that you give out, the more bonuses that you will get, but simultaneously the greater the risk that something is going to end up happening to your country, where one of these factions, whether it is the clergy, the nobility, or the burghers, are just going to try and take over the country, and that is a real thing that can happen leading into civil war. What we are going to do in the first place is we are going to get the privileges that are best for us here, that are going to help us in the first place. And these privileges, some of them are going to be the same that you're going to want to get no matter what country you're playing as. Others are going to be more specific to the country that you are playing at that point. In this case, as Portugal, let's go ahead and go through that. First off, we're going to summon the diet. Summon the diet is going to give 5 influence, but it will also increase the loyalty of these varying states by 5%. So we're going to get that, and we're going to choose a mission. The short of it is choose whatever mission is best for you. If I look at this in the diet, I can see that the proposal of the clergy is that they want the tax rate in Coimbra to increase to 6. So that means we would have to focus and spend our admin points. That's not really one that you want to do unless you have a bunch of admin points laying around, but it's a really easy one to do in the first place. The nobility wants us to own a province in central Morocco, specifically Fez. And if you own at least one province, then it will not only give you 15 loyalty because it's going to make the nobility happy, but simultaneously 15 admin power. This is a great one to get in the beginning, as Morocco is actually who we plan to go to war with from the beginning. So we're going to want to go ahead and select that. But first off, let's look at Burgers. Burgers wants us to make Agadir, I guess that's how you would say that. We would have to have 25% more trade power in it. Unless you really have a lot of trade and the ability to really send your ships around, which Portugal does. But unless you really want to focus on trying to consolidate trade within a region, this one is not necessarily a good one. We're going to go with nobility because that's a really good one to have from the beginning. And if you see, by selecting that, it wants us to control one of the provinces here in Fez. And what that has actually done, if I hit diplomacy, is that has given us a full claim over Fez, Menix, Tadla, and Marrakech. This means that if we take any of these provinces, that we are going to be able to take them for cheaper, and it's not going to cost us any diplo points to take them in the first place, and they will be easier to core. This is a fantastic one to get in the first place. On top of that, now that we have done so, we can go ahead and start handing out privileges. First off, for the clergy, what you're going to want to do almost every time, if you are a smaller state that is going to be expanding, is you are going to want to give out the +1 points privileges. In the case of clergy, this is going to be religious state. It's going to give us +1 admin power, but it's going to cost us 10% crown land, and it's also going to make the clergy less loyal to us. We are going to do the exact same thing with the nobility. +1 military points, but again, loss of loyalty, and also loss of land. And we are going to give out the same thing to burghers. +1 diplo, but loss of loyalty and loss of land. We now own 0% crown land. And what you can see from there is that this has given us some horrible malices. First off, we are losing 20% of the potential tax income that we would have. Any vassals that we would have are going to have their development increase their rate of wanting liberty by 150%, and then it decreases our absolutism by 50. But absolutism is not something until really going into the late 1600s that is actually going to matter for you. So that can essentially be ignored. So now that we have done so, we are going to do a couple things. First off, this is going to give us +1 point for every single aspect here of our points. And this is a very important thing to have in the first place, because the more points you have, the more you can spend. This is always a very good thing to do if you are playing a smaller nation, or a nation at least that is going to expand rapidly. And what do I mean? Well, you gave away all your crown land by doing this. But the more states that you take over and expand, you will seize their land, and that is actually going to add to the crown land, restoring your authority. So let's go ahead and give out the remainder of the privileges before we do anything else. As Portugal, one of the things that you're going to do if you scroll on down here is that you are going to want to get such things as oversight by the clergy. It's going to give you some additional loyalty as well as clergy influence, but the big thing in here is you're not really paying much influence, but you're getting more loyalty back, so that's good. At the same time, you are primarily going to be expanding against Muslim forces, or at the very least against non-Christian. Thus, expansionist zealotry is a great one to get, as not only does it not give any kind of influence or anything, but it simply gives a bonus that every time you are fighting against an army of a non-faith, non-true faith nation, you are going to get a 5% bonus to morale. At the same time, if you are not waging war against any heretics or anything like that, then your troops are going to actually have lower morale. So for example, if you are caught in a long war with a fellow Catholic nation and it goes on for a decade, your troops are going to have a lot less morale because they're not fighting heretics. But still, it's a good one to have right now in the first place. Other fantastic one to have here in the beginning, religious diplomats. This is going to give us plus 25 relation with any country that has the same faith. Now, if you are playing a country that does not have many other adherents to the same faith, say for example, if you are playing an Orthodox country, it's not going to be something that's going to be very helpful for you. Or if you are a nation that is, say, a Hindu nation surrounded by Muslim states or something like that, it might not be something that is very helpful for you. But as a Catholic nation in 1444, when every single Christian nation, with the exception of the few Orthodox states, are Catholic, this is very big because it is going to give us plus 25 relation with every single nation. And actually, by selecting that, that has allowed us to complete another mission, the English Alliance, which, by having plus 100 relation with them, we are going to get a claim over the entire Galicia and Asturias region. So if I just select that, and I go to diplomacy now, I now have a claim across all of this region here for northern Spain, which just happened from the beginning. Let's go back into those estates. Now going on to the nobility. If we are going to select right of council, again, just give us those that loyalty as well as the influence. Supremacy over the crown is a big one here because this is going to increase loyalty for both the clergy and also for the nobility, but it's also going to increase both of their influences. So this is a very important, good one to take, but simultaneously you have to watch how high your clergy loyalty as well as influence are, because that influence, if you take this, might just get a little too high and potentially lead to some problems. Next step, burghers. If we go down to burghers, you can see that there are such things as patronage of the arts, great one to get, because yes, it reduces your tax income by 5%, but yearly prestige is increased by 0.5, which is great, and it starts off the game by giving you 15 prestige. Little side note here, if you are actually in negative prestige, then this will be 25 prestige. So it can be a very good thing to have. So if you're at minus 40, that will actually give you 25, not 15, which is an even bigger boost. So we're going to go ahead and take that from the beginning, as prestige is a very, very powerful tool. The more prestige you have, the better. You want to maintain as high a level as you can maintain. Next step, free enterprise. And then this is where it actually gets very interesting. You see, as Portugal is a trade state, I could select private trade fleets, which is going to give me a lot of bonus to my trade ship power, which this is something that we're definitely going to want to do. But it is also possible that instead you can save it, not get that fourth privilege, which, mind you, you can only have 4 privileges, and instead choose indebted to the burghers. The reason why indebted to the burghers is powerful is because it will give you 5 loans that are only at 1% interest. Now, if you take a loan, which I can go over here to the economy tab, and if I hit take a loan, a single loan will give me 69 ducats, but that is going to have a 4% interest rate. And that interest is something that will be paid off gradually. So if I loaned 100, if I took 100 ducats in a loan, I would end up having to pay 104 ducats back. That's just something that I would have to do if that was a singular loan. In this case, if I took a 100 ducat loan, I would only have to pay 101 back, which doesn't really sound like a lot, but you have to think. Over the course of the years, as that interest is building and you are paying and your economy may be going through all kinds of, well, turbulence, to put it mildly, then 1% interest is basically free money because you're not going to have to deal with nearly as much. And the more money that you have to take out in loans, it's better for that interest rate to be significantly lower. So you could do this, but in this case, I don't think that we're going to necessarily need it just yet. We're going to wait, and we're not going to get private trade fleets because we really need to save our trade ships to be used in battle. All right, and now that we have done so, you can see we have 55% loyalty in here. What we're going to do is we're going to seize land. Now, seize land, you can do this action every 5 years, and what that is going to do is it's going to seize 5% of crownland from all these estates that you have given out. Now, mind you, we have 0% crownland right now, so we are going to do this. But when you seize crownland, then all of your estates are going to lose 20 loyalty. And as it warns you right here, if your loyalty for any of these estates drops below 30, it is going to spawn rebels. So you have to watch and make sure when you hit seize crownland, whether or not that if they drop below 30, like, you're gonna end up having to deal with rebels, and you're gonna really want to avoid that in many situations. If it's not gonna be of a concern for you, you can go ahead and do so, but in many cases you always want to maintain at least 30 loyalty, because rebels are great for farming experience, but simultaneously when it drops below that, you will get very negative effects. The big thing that is going to kill us here in this regard, unless we expand quicker, is this right here, the autonomy. And now you might wonder, okay, well, why is that a bad thing? Well, the more autonomy that you have in a province, the less money, the less manpower, the less production, the less everything you get from it, because there's less control that you physically have over that province, so you're not obtaining nearly as much from it, which is why basically every 5 years you're going to want to seize crown land and try and get as much of that back as possible. Simultaneously, you want to expand fairly quickly so that you can seize all the crown land from other nations so that you don't have to deal with those effects for nearly the same amount of time. This is very powerful and effective for smaller nations, but for larger nations this is kind of harder to do in the first place. You still can, but it's something that you need to keep an eye on. All right, now I actually had to cut this part because I completely forgot to do it from the beginning, so I reloaded it here. But what you are going to need to do before you hit this seized land is that you need to sell titles. Now the thing is, you need to have at least over 0% of crown land in order to do so, but in doing this you will get a stupid amount of money. So the easiest thing that we can do is you can go over here to production interface, you will go over to development, you will go and hit arrange by cost, hit it again, and that will actually show you the cheapest province that you actually have to, well, develop. In this case, it's Beja. Beja down here. If we select this, we can go over to the actual state of the region here, which our capital is in Lisboa, so we're going to want to select this from the beginning anyway. And you're going to want to select this edict. If you select the edict, you will then hit encourage development. That is going to decrease the cost by 10% for any kind of development. If you then go down to Beja, you can then hit any one of these, but I honestly just go ahead and recommend using your Diplo points, because if you do this, boom, now we have less than 0% crown land, and we can go ahead and sell titles. After selling titles, you will get 450 ducats, and loyalty will go up by all states by 10%. And you can already see from the beginning just what high loyalty does. It gives you some really good bonuses that you would like to have at a later point, but we will get to that. So what we're going to do now is seize land, and boom, the worst of the crownland negative aspects are gone. And if we want to get rid of this so it's not plus 0.3, it's only going to be plus 0.2, we can go ahead and develop it one more time, which we just went into one of these provinces here and spent, I don't know what we want to do in here, maybe just some admin. You could spend admin. In this case, we also could just spend another Diplo point for it here. So if I just spent this here in Evora, developed by wine, that's going to give us some 45. So there we go. We are now, boom, at plus 0.2, which means that's not nearly as bad of effect as what we would have seen if we were looking at, say, 0.3, but we have a stupid amount of money that we can then use for conquest. Now, at the same time, we are going to really need to get a goal over here in order to take on Morocco, as I said. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to get missions by selecting competitive advantage. But in order to get that, we need to have 100% of our force limit. So we're going to go to production interface. We're going to click on our naval units, and we are going to go ahead and, well, you could easily build either 2 or 3 barks, or you could build some galleys. Considering where it is over here in combat, I would probably recommend just building some galleys to help us fight, because we're going to be doing a lot of fighting along the inner seas over here. So we're just going to get 3 galleys, and we are going to build these. And what you could go ahead and do, if you really wanted to, now that we have the gold, is you could go and build a flagship. But we need to have at least 1,500 sailors in order to make it, so we can't quite do that yet. What we're going to then do instead is we're just going to get this made, and that's going to increase the total amount of sailors that we are going to have in the field at this time. All right, now a month has passed and there's really not much that we can do. If you go down here, normally at the 12th of December, 1444, that is the first moment that you were able to start declaring a war. And even if I could attack Morocco right now and bring them in with the help of Aragon by promising them land, it is a great position for us. We would be able to go and attack them with drastically more forces and more than likely completely crush them. But this is not something that we're able to do. You may wonder why? Well, that is because we are currently in a Regency Council and we cannot do anything. We have to wait, where if I hit over here on court, Infante Pedro, this is the Regency Council that oversees him. Alfonso de Avis is 12 years old and will become of age. Let's see, what year is he actually going to become of age? And so he is actually going to ascend to the throne on the 15th of January 1447, which means that we absolutely cannot do anything. Instead, we have this issue where we have, well, we have all these fortresses, we have all this navy, we have all this everything that really is not doing anything for us, and we have to wait 2 years no matter what. So what we are going to do is we're going to go to our economics, and we are going to go ahead and lower our army maintenance, and we are going to mothball all of our forts. And we are going to do this because we really need to save up as much money as we possibly can, and we are going to really fast forward by about 2.5 years, and we are going to see what it is that things look like at that time. I'll see you then. Also, side note, because I forgot to mention this from the beginning, but you are going to want to place embargoes on all of your rivals from the very beginning. So to do that, you go to economics, you're going to issue embargo, and you're going to hit it. It's under the economics of each section. We're going to do that for Tlemcen, we are going to do that for Morocco, and we are going to do that for Tunis as soon as I get another diplomat on here. Let's go ahead and get that. What that's going to do is that's going to hurt their economic power, and simultaneously it's going to increase our power projection for that area. So we are essentially going to hold off on there for about 2 years until things really clear themselves up for us. All right, now it is January of 1447, and we finally have a commander again. I say commander, but I mean we have a ruler. So we have a person that is our king, and that means that instead of in a Regency Council, we can actually declare war. Now, the interesting that is going on here is that Morocco, in this time, they have managed to get themselves allied with both Granada and Tunis, but both are very interesting situations, and this is going to vary depending entirely on what kind of game you're playing. It could be really anything that happens, but this is what has just happened in my game. So Granada will always have these pretender rebels that rise up right around this time frame, and it's good that it did, because this is going to distract us here and create a little bit of chaos. In the case of Tunis, Tunis has actually gone ahead and declared war on the province here of Djerd, which in turn is allied with, let's see, let me go down to it here. Who are they actually at war with? So Djerd and Mazab. So they are fighting a two-front war down here, which is interesting that they have to deal with. So if we go to Morocco and we go to declare war, we can actually go and declare on them by offering Aragon some land, and they will help us. And while Granada and Tunis will both agree to go into the war, they simultaneously are not going to get much help because, well, both are trapped in kind of rebellions. Thus begins the stage, and we can go ahead and declare war. This has been the beginning stages of really how it is that you have to set up Portugal. I'm going to go ahead and explain how combat works on our next episode. Again, I apologize. Thank you so much for joining in for me here for this video. I know it's been a month since I did my last one, but next time I'm going to show you pretty much how your war with Morocco for that first case is going to look. Thank you again, everyone, for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.